Let's get to it and welcome Ray Didinger back to Philly Pressbox Radio. Ray, welcome.
Hello, guys. Always good to be with you.
Ray, great to see you once again. Thanks for giving us some comments, by the way, on Bill Bradley and the new Joe Zagorski book about Super Bill. We aired that last week. We had a great time talking to Super Bill. He's always fun. And you wrote the foreword for that terrific book. Good stuff. Ray, let's talk about –
Bill's one of my favorite guys. I mean,
yeah.
He was there weren't a whole lot of highlights to those early years when I was covering the Eagles from 70. I started covering them in 70 and then all the way through. And those early years were pretty rough. But watching Bill Bradley and getting to know him and become friends with him was definitely a highlight.
Yeah, things are much better these days regarding the Eagles. And let's talk about them. We'll talk first about what happened Friday night down in Brazil. The Eagles escaping with a win over the Packers. I guess we saw in game one what a difference maker Saquon Barkley is. Is he the real deal, huh?
Yeah, I don't think it's any great surprise. I was a little bit surprised in the run-up to this season that there wasn't really more talk about Saquon Barkley. To me, I mean, the addition of him was very surprising. I mean, it was a very big departure for the Eagles to invest that kind of money in a running back. It's just not the way they have done business for a long time. And so when they went out and signed him, I thought, wow, I mean, that's bringing him in really changes that offense dramatically. And I was a little bit surprised that so many people here, maybe they were just blindsided by it. But so many people here, there wasn't much talk about it. Just, gee, I don't know. You know, they had seen him with the Giants over these last few years, and the Giants were not a very good team. And so they thought, well, I don't know if Saquon Barkley's anything really that special. He has injury issues. He's had spending a lot of money. We've never done it with a running back before. All of this stuff was kind of out there, and I kind of thought people would be excited about it, and they weren't. And I kept saying, no, I think this is a really big deal. And it turned out that anybody that watched the game on Friday night saw what a difference maker he is. I mean, I really thought, assuming he was healthy, that he was a guy that was going to have immediate impact with this team. And 3 touchdowns in his first game is pretty immediate impact, I'd say.
Yeah. Well, Ray, 26 touches, 24 on the ground, 2 in the air, 132 yards, 3 touchdowns, as you said. Pretty heavy workload for opening night. Do you see a little bit more of Kenny Gainwell along the way, or somebody else? What do you think is a safe amount of touches for Saquon?
I would say in the 20s. I think that's fine. Between the two, between running the ball and catching the ball, I think that's fine. I mean, if you made that kind of commitment to him and you're paying him that kind of money, he's not going to be doing 6-7 touches a game. I mean, you brought him in here with the idea that he was going to be the guy. I mean, this is not he's going to play these downs, but he's not going to play these downs. I mean, he's going to play a lot, and he should, because you see what a difference he makes out there. I mean, it's been said before, but it's true. I mean, this is easily the best offensive line he's ever run behind. And when you put him on the field with that many really skilled position players around him, Smith and Brown and Goddard and now Dotson, it really puts a tremendous burden on the defense. I mean, who are you going to cover? And I really think that one touchdown pass that you saw in this game, you're going to see that play a lot, because they can run that wheel route out of the backfield with him and pretty much guarantee themselves that they're going to have one-on-one linebacker coverage with him, because they can't cover. They have to cover everybody else. The only thing they can do is put a linebacker on him, and you let him run a 20-yard wheel route. He's going to run past every linebacker in the league. And that's going to be a real good play for this Eagles team. So I think you're going to see that a lot. And, I think that Saquon Barkley sent a message that this was very important to him. I mean, he was hurt by the way he left New York. He didn't really want to leave New York. They made it clear that they weren't going to keep him. And so when he came here obviously with a purpose. And I guarantee you there were a lot of sick people up in New York watching that game on Tuesday night. Maybe the sickest of them all might have been John Mara, the owner.
Right.
Yep. Well, it was Jaylen Herz, of course, who threw that great touchdown pass to Saquon, another one to A.J. Brown. Let's talk about the quarterback. With Jason Kelce at center last year, even with him, they had trouble picking up the blitz, and there was concern that that would be an issue again this year. But you saw the statistics. Jaylen did pretty well handling the blitz on Friday night, did he not?
Yeah, he did. And he's going to have to continue to do that.
Yeah.
Obviously, he still made too many mistakes.
Right.
Turned the ball over 3 times. And that's, we coming into this season, I mean, we can talk about Saquon Barkley and we can talk about Brown and Smith and, we can talk about Vic Fangio and Kellen Moore and all the new elements that brought in here. But this guy right here, he's the key. I mean, he's the key. If he plays the way he played last year and turns the ball over 20 times, the Eagles probably are not going to, if you're thinking about the Super Bowl, you're not going to get to the Super Bowl the quarterback who turns it over 20 times. I mean, they've got a lot of good players. They have a lot going for them. But ultimately, and this is not unique to the Eagles, you could say this about pretty much any team in the NFL, it really comes down to the quarterback. And they need him to play well. They need him to, if he comes back and he plays the way he played 2 years ago, when the Eagles went to the Super Bowl, this team has a chance to do some really big things. But they need him to be consistent week in and week out, and they need him to be mistake-free as often as possible. Friday night, he'll be the first one to admit it, he made too many mistakes. He made too many bad decisions. But, he didn't play at all in the preseason, and they're probably just working some things out. That makes sense. But he's going to have to get better week to week. But the one thing about the Eagles you can say is they turned the ball over 3 times and they still scored 34 points. So that'll give you an idea of just how potent this offense is. But to really go to where you want to go, which is the Super Bowl, a lot of it's going to fall on the quarterback.
Well, Ray, I tried to take a step back and look at the stat sheet. The stats do sometimes lie. But 3 turnovers, 4 for 14 on third down, gave up 163 yards rushing, had 7 penalties for 70 or 57 yards. Sounds like a recipe for a loss, but yet they come out of that with a win against a pretty good Green Bay team.
Against a pretty good team, exactly. Green Bay, when I was looking at that game, I mean, to me, it was really a toss-up kind of game. I think Green Bay's really good. I think Green Bay's going to be a playoff team. Well, I mean, with the injury to the quarterback now, that clouds things a little bit.
Right. Sure.
But assuming that they're going to get Love back, I mean, they have the makings of being a playoff team too. I mean, these two teams could meet again. I mean, that's not impossible. So to go down there to play on that miserable field and first week of the season, 10-hour flight. Don't get me started. Don't get me started on. Don't get me started on international football. I mean, I think it's ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous to take 2 good teams and have them fly all the way to South America to play the first game of the season on a field that you wouldn't want a high school team playing on. I mean, that's, if the folks in the NFL office and Roger Goodell aren't embarrassed, they should be. They should be. Now they're going to be happy because I'm sure they got great TV ratings and they made a lot of money. And no doubt they sold a lot of T-shirts, and unfortunately, I think that's the league spends too much time worrying about that stuff and at the expense of the game and sometimes at the expense of the players. But you got it behind you now. You don't have to think about São Paulo now until maybe next year. But I just thought the whole thing was ill-conceived. And worst of all was when you go down there and you see the field is borderline unplayable. I mean, that to me is unforgivable. But that's in the past. You're 1-0, and now you're coming home to play your real home opener on Monday Night Football against an Atlanta team that looked like they couldn't get out of their own way on Sunday.
Hey, Ray, let's talk about the Eagles' defense. It certainly had its moments on Friday night. one of the real stars, the biggest star, I would think, would be the new guy, the linebacker, Zack Bond. He wasn't really a star in New Orleans, but man, he sure looked good against the Packers, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He did, and he did most of the summer. I mean, he was a guy that nobody really thought much about or knew much about during training camp, but he just kept showing up every day. And when he actually did play in the games, and the more he played, he was all over the field. And sometimes, he's not exactly unknown. I mean, he was a third-round draft pick, so he had a pretty decent college career. And in many cases in the National Football League, it's a question of just being in the right place at the right time, and finding the right situation, the right defensive scheme, and the right defensive coordinator. And Vic Fangio, who is the new defensive coordinator, throughout training camp talked about him a lot. I mean, his name came up in press conferences a lot, and it was obvious that Vic really liked this guy and was going to find ways to use him. And you look at his production on Friday night, it was pretty good. I mean, 15 tackles. And even if you go beyond the stat line, some of the stuff that doesn't show up in the stat line was he was making plays for other guys. I mean, the Blankenship interception was really his play. I mean, he gets that great depth. He runs with the tight end down the seam, and he's underneath him, and he forces Love to try and squeeze the ball over his head. And that gives Blankenship the opportunity to make the interception. If he's not there, it's a much easier throw. But the fact that he recognized the play right away, ran with the tight end, and closed that window the way he did, it doesn't show up in his stat line, but he really kind of made that interception happen.
What'd you think about the other linebacker, Ray? Nakobe Dean ends up getting the start, and Devin White ends up not making the trip, injured. I don't think we knew about. And now we find out Nakobe Dean actually won the job. Does that surprise you in any way?
No. I've been a big Nakobe Dean guy from the day they drafted him, and a lot of people really down on him after the last 2 years because he didn't get on the field that much. He had some injury issues. When he did play, people said he wasn't that impressive. And I've been all along saying, look, I saw this guy play at a very, very, very high level at the University of Georgia. I mean, I know there's size is an issue. I mean, if you're talking about a Mike kind of linebacker, you normally think of a bigger guy, but he's so instinctive that, to me, the linebacker position is so much about instinct. I mean, the guys in the secondary, they're kind of playing assignment football. The guys at the defensive line are kind of playing assignments. Linebackers really make plays largely on their instinct. And some guys have it and some guys don't. And you can't really coach it. Some guys just have it. And anybody that saw him play at the University of Georgia knew that he had a ton of instinct. And it was just a matter of him being on the field. And I had a feeling with working with Vic Fangio when he came in here, if he could just stay healthy, that he could be a really significant player this year. I mean, everybody talked about Davis and Carter need to step up their game, and all the other Georgia guys. There was all this talk about Smith and all these Georgia guys that really have to contribute. And everybody kind of forgot about Dean. And, I kept saying, don't count him out. I mean, I thought that and again, it all comes back to him avoiding injury and staying on the field. But I think in this defense, especially with the way Fangio runs it, I think he has a chance to be really productive.
Another guy that looks like he's going to be really productive is the Eagles' first-round draft pick last April, Quenton Mitchell, the first cornerback to start a game one in decades, I think, for the Eagles. What did you think of the performance of Quenton Mitchell in the opener?
Very good, but not surprising. I mean, he's a quality player. I really thought that he was the best cornerback in the whole draft. I really did. In fact, going into the draft and all the pre-draft analysis, he was the guy I kept saying, I hope the Eagles get this guy, because Lord knows anybody that saw them down the stretch last year knew that you needed some better players in the secondary. And I'm not talking about 4th and 5th round guys. I'm talking about blue chip kinds of guys. And I thought he was the bluest of the blue chips. The only thing that really surprised me was that they were able to get him at 22. I thought that if to get him, which I thought was obviously a good idea, I thought they were going to have to trade up and maybe trade up into the top 15, maybe even top 12 to get him because he was that good. But there was such a run on offensive players at the top of the draft with the quarterbacks and everything that some really good defensive players, including him, fell way farther than they should. And lo and behold, he was there at 22. So the Eagles got him. And yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that he was going to be a starter. They've tried him. They've played him in the slot. He can play in there, but he can also play outside. It's a shame that Cooper DeJean, who's second-round pick, I mean, to me, Mitchell and DeJean were the two best defensive backs in the draft. I really thought that. And Eagles wound up getting both of them. And, it's a shame that DeJean suffered the hamstring injury during training camp, which cost him some time. And he's a little bit behind. And Fangio has said that to this point, that he's a little bit behind and not quite where he needs to be. But I feel it's not going to be too much longer and not going to be too much deeper into the season that you're going to see those two guys on the field together a lot. And they're going to be on the field together a lot with this team for a long, long time. I think they are that good.
Well, Ray, when you can hold an NFL quarterback to 50% passing these days, that's pretty good as a unit, and they did that this week. But with that, as mentioned earlier, does the 163 yards rushing allowed, does that concern you any?
Yeah, because you're going to have to do better than that. But again, first game of the season, a lot of things happen the first week of the season that are not normal. Sometimes things that you didn't think were going to be really good all of a sudden look really good. And now you think, wow, that's really great. We're really good in that area. And then by week 4, no, we weren't. And sometimes you have a day like this where your team gets gashed a little bit and you think, man, is this going to be a problem all year? And, by week 4 or 5, no, we got it worked out. And that's kind of the way I feel about this. I think that the Eagles, the run defense will be there. I believe that. The one area of the defense that I was a little disappointed in, and I think absolutely has to get better, is the pass rush. I mean, they got very little production from their edge guys.
Yeah.
And, they spent a lot of money on Huff to bring him in from New York with the idea that he was going to take Hassan Reddick's place as the key guy in their pass rush. And he was almost invisible in the first game. Now, I think maybe the condition of the field could have something to do with it, on a slippery field like this. And Lord knows we remember the Super Bowl about how a wet, slippery field can neutralize your edge rush. And I think that may have been part of it. But that's something that you want to have that better as the season goes on. And, I'm sure that's one of the areas that Vic Fangio is looking at is, getting that pass rush going and, getting Huff and Smith and those guys in it. You got a little bit of play out of Sweat. Sweat made a few plays, but the other guys have to pick it up. So I'm assuming it's going to be better Monday night when they're back playing at the Link.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that one. We're also looking forward to what's happening next Tuesday and Wednesday, Ray. You and your pal Glenn McNow and Joe Conklin have something pretty cool coming up next week in Ardmore. I'm going to be there for the first of that 2-night stint. Tell everybody about this great event.
Yeah, it was an idea that Glenn and I kind of kicked around. I mean, we've done a couple of things. We did the sports movies night, which have done very well, and people really like them, and we've enjoyed doing them. But we said, why don't we try something else? And so we came up with this idea to do a show called The Greatest Moments in Philadelphia Sports History, where we pick what we think were the 10 greatest moments in Philadelphia sports history within the last 50 years. I mean, we're not going all the way back to Connie Mac's A's or the Whiz Kids or anything like that. We're trying to keep it into the fairly recent past, but pick out what we consider to be the top 10 moments and talk about them, tell some stories about them, reminisce, and get an opportunity to kind of relive a lot of that stuff. And, Glenn and I will be there doing all the facts and figures. And Joe Conklin is going to be there to provide all the things that Joe Conklin provides. So when you have Joe Conklin in the house, that means you also have Allen Iverson, Charlie Manuel, Harry Callis, Merrill Reese, Mike Quick. Joe will be doing all of those voices because, of course, all of those guys are part of those 10 great moments. So it's going to be it's the first time we've ever tried it. We've rehearsed it a couple of times, went pretty good. And so we'll do it Tuesday night and Wednesday night at the Ardmore Music Hall on Lancaster Avenue. The second show, the show on the 18th, is sold out. But there are some tickets still available for the show on the 17th. So if you want to get call or maybe even walk up that night, you can maybe get a ticket. The 18th is sold out, but there are some still tickets for 17th. And I can pretty much guarantee that people come out will have a real fun evening because, hey, listen, it's the ultimate highlight show. I mean, there's nothing but highlights in this show and lots of great memories there. So I hope that people come out and join us.
And what time does that start, Ray?
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock.
8
Okay.
o'clock. Doors open at 6:45 and the show starts at 8.
So that gives those Wednesday sellout crowds time to listen to Philly Press Box Radio before your show starts.
They could do that.
Very good.
I have one more question for Ray. Ray, about 10 days ago, the Phillies were on back-to-back national TV nights against the Braves. And somebody mentioned that damn Gary Maddox quote about water and Gary Maddox covering center field. And they attributed it to Ralph Kiner. Yeah. And I said, tell everybody, Ray, it was you.
It was me. Then the quote is 2/3 of the Earth's surface. 2/3 of the Earth's surface is covered by water. The other 1/3 is covered by Gary Maddox. I wrote that when I was at the Philadelphia Bulletin, 1978, and it was. I still remember it was a Sunday afternoon game against the Cincinnati Reds at the Old Vet. And it was one of those games where I don't know how many putouts Gary had. I mean, he must have had 11 putouts. I mean, he was just running from one side of the field to the other. And so I wrote that line. And what happened was the New York Mets were coming into town the next night to start a series with the Phillies. And I can only guess that Ralph Kiner picked up the Bulletin that day and read it and liked the line, and then used it on the air that night back to New York. And the New York writers and the columnists up there, they just assumed that Ralph came up with it himself. And so for many, many years, if you ever see a book, famous sports quotes, famous quotes of baseball, all those kinds of books of famous sports quotations, it will always be in there. And it's almost always attributed to Ralph Kiner. Now, over time, some people have attributed it to Harry Callis, and I mean, a couple of people attributed it to Bill Conlon. But I can honestly tell you, hand on a Bible, that it was my quote originally.
That's awesome. Good deal. Well, Ray, one final thing for me, one final question. Speaking of the Phillies, what do you like as we head to the middle of September in the home stretch? You like this team?
I do. I have some, they're offensively, they're real spotty. I mean, they can go dry real quick. They can, they score that. You look at that. I mean, their run differential, they're one of the league leaders. I mean, they're almost 30 games over 500, all that stuff. But they can go through spells where all of a sudden they just don't hit, and you get into the postseason and you hit one of those and you can get bounced, I think that you've got a really good top of the rotation guy in Wheeler, who I think is really terrific. Is as good as anybody out there. And Nola has come through for you in the past in the postseason. Suarez scares me now. He doesn't even resemble the guy that we saw in April and May. I mean, they're going to pitch him because they kind of have to, but do I have a lot of confidence in him? No. Sanchez has been really good at home, not so good on the road. And I think the bullpen with the addition of Estevez, I think is is better than it was. I think they have a ninth inning guy now. But I mean, right now, my feeling is I think it's kind of what I've felt all year. I thought we were headed towards Phillies Dodgers championship series. I think that's going to be it. I think they're the two best teams, and I think they're going to be the ones ultimately playing for the National League pennant. And that should be a really good series.
Yeah.
All right, Ray. Well, we run out of time, and as always, it was fantastic. It always goes by way too fast.
Yeah, I always enjoy being with you guys. A lot of fun. And hey, listen, we got, it's always fun, but it's more fun when we have good stuff to talk about.
That's right.
And when the Phillies are in first place, heading for the postseason, we're talking about magic numbers. That's a good thing. The Eagles are 1-0, getting ready to play a Monday night game at home. That's all good stuff, and it's a fun conversation, and I'm always happy to be with you fellas.
Well, we appreciate
Thanks, Ray.
you.
I'll see you next week.
Okay, I'll look for you, Chet.
All right.
All right, Ray. Thanks.